Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I'll be asking my guests about the pain and failures that have resulted in the internal changes that have made them the unique individuals they are. So if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, keep listening. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the CEO of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that put people and planet before profit. We were one of the first B Corps in the UK in 2015, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I realised a few years ago that if we really were going to change the world for better, we would also need to change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit had to be mirrored by an inner change, and that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
There was a little clip of Gabor Mate talking about how when he was young he just worked and how he wished he'd had more fun. He talks about Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin in the Enchanted Forest, and it just ends with, we all need to be in the Enchanted Forest a bit more. And your chapter on playful touched me deeply when I reread it. I thought, yeah, I could do with a bit more of that, a bit more time in the Enchanted Forest.
My guest today is Sue Richardson. Sue is an award-winning non-fiction publisher, creator of the pocket-sized business book series The Authority Guides, and founder and publishing director of The Right Book Company. She's passionate about empowering her authors to shine their light more brightly than they could have dreamed of. And for 20 years, she's been changing the world through books. Her colleagues describe her as deeply empathic, down-to-earth, and someone that makes things happen. They also said Sue is driven by helping people bring great ideas into the world. Sue loves living in her adopted home city of Bristol and is obsessed by making things, often found knitting socks, crocheting blankets, or making very small sculptures out of beads. Sue, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you very much, Paul.
So, as you know, this podcast is trying to get under the skin of people who've got stuff done, actually. That's what your colleague said about you. And what is it about them inside that makes them the kind of person that does get stuff done and achieve stuff? And hopefully when people listen to these episodes, they'll be inspired to do more themselves. So I always tend to start with people's childhood and what that looked like. So tell me a bit about your early years of your life.
Well, I was born in the deep, dark, rural countryside of Northumberland in the northeast of England, a beautiful county, and I was born to mum and dad who were very quickly moved from there to the south. So around about 6 years old, we moved down to just outside London, where my dad had been promoted in his job.
So you lost the Geordie accent then.
Lost the Geordie accent completely. I think I had one briefly at primary school, but sadly, apart from the odd sort of family chat that happens because we're all from the northeast, it's gone, and I'm rather southern now, as you can probably hear. But we very sadly I lost my dad when I was 9.
Wow.
So Mum and I actually headed back up. My brother was left at boarding school down in the south, and things didn't go terribly well for us as kids, really. It was really tough losing Dad when we were so young. And, it was 1969. Giving my age away now. I was 9 years old. And, I don't think, being sort of from this kind of middle-class Northumbrian family that... To be really honest, I don't think people really knew how to handle the grief of kids in those days. No. And my mum was very young as well. She was very young, and very, very luckily, she met another guy really, really quickly. And my wonderful second dad came along, my stepfather. And again, we moved back down to the south where he was, because he was based in London, although he also was from the northeast. So yeah, we had a bit of chopping and changing, but
I mean,
a bit of a tough time.
Yeah, I mean, sorry for your loss at such an early age. I can't comprehend that. But the stepfather situation, often that's not a good story. Obviously, in your case, it sounds like it was. So, in terms of your childhood values, what would you say what were they? Where did they come from?
Well, I think that I was quite an insular child. I probably buried my sadness by actually, from a very early age, getting very absorbed in books.
Right.
And reading became my solace. It was my escape. The stories that would just enwrap me in their world, and just take me into a place that was happier, was more joyful, more interesting, or more easy, I suppose, than what my childhood was. And although, yes, we were absolutely blessed to have a wonderful second dad, those early years before he came along, I did a lot of escaping. They would call me a daydreamer. I was always in my own funny little world as a small child, and I think that the whole that's where I fell in love with books and reading. Really.
I wonder if you thought at that age whether you'd end up being books as being your life.
Strangely, absolutely not. I am 100% sure I had no idea, but I think that I did have some idea that stories would be a big part of it, because later on I ended up thinking that I wanted to be in the theatre, and that was where I started out. So it was always about storytelling for me.
Okay, so you ended up in the theatre, did you?
Briefly, yes.
Grease paints the lights?
It was certainly, that was the intention from about the age of 14, I suppose. It was either politics, journalism, or the theatre. But what I really wanted was to be a director rather than an actor. And I found actually that, having made my decision to not go to drama school, because I had a place at the Activists, which was the youth theatre of the Royal Court in London. And I felt that I didn't want to go and bury myself in theatre school, because I was doing it. I was actually out there on the stage and doing it. So I began the journey, but actually performing was always quite terrifying for me, really.
Just coming back to your dad dying at such an early age, what impact do you think that's had on you during your life, and how long did that last? Or is it still there now? Even?
I think it is. Honestly, I mean, I suppose everybody goes through bereavement and loss, and when you get to your mid-60s, you've probably had your fair share of it, and I certainly have. I lost my husband 10 years ago. I lost my brother this year. These things always floor you, and I think what I have always done is I've in the end faced up to them, if that makes sense. I think that one of the things that happened to me as a child was that, because in those days grief wasn't something that we talked about, it wasn't something that we were able to really explore openly and talk, and we weren't encouraged to do that. And my poor mum was also not encouraged to show her pain, really. And so I think that when I got to my 20s and I discovered I was, losing my way, and the theatre wasn't quite right for me, and I didn't really know what to do, and I really had quite a major breakdown, actually. And that was the first time I went in and did some therapy.
Right.
I've done it all my life, on and off, ever since.
Yeah, I mean, quite a few people do it now, but that long ago, and that was quite unusual, wasn't it, at the time? When you were in your 20s, therapy wasn't a thing.
I think it was.
Yeah. I mean, people would be embarrassed to say they were having help, wouldn't they? Whether it shouldn't be embarrassing.
Exactly. I mean, I was incredibly fortunate, because I was in such a big depression. I couldn't get out of bed type of depression. And the doctor had put me on some ghastly medication, which made me feel even worse. And I had a wonderful friend who just came one day and scooped me up, got me out of bed, and took me to this amazing place in North London called the Women's Therapy Centre. I don't suppose it's still there. But they were wonderful. And they just said, right, they put me in for a sort of test session with somebody, and that was it. I was in twice a week for the next 6 years. And I have never looked back. I mean, I think it was at that point that I began on that journey of self-awareness, that journey of understanding, you can't take away the pain and the sense of the damage, if you like, that's been done. But what you can do is you can understand it. You can understand why you feel what you feel. You can understand how you can turn it around. You can't erase it, you can't rub it out, but you can make it, I think it's about understanding yourself so that you can forgive yourself and move on.
I didn't intend to get quite so heavy so early in this, but I was going to come to, because you have had probably an unfair share of loss in your life, I think, compared to most people. Would you say that your more recent losses you've worked through them better because of that counselling and back in the day, or it's probably no easier, is it?
I don't think it is.
No.
I mean, it's difficult to know when you say better.
Well, grieving. 9-year-olds a different scenario, but I know I didn't grieve properly for my mum. She died quite young. I was 30, I think. So not nowhere near you, but I had 3 kids, another one on the way at the time, just started the business. I didn't have time to grieve. I was, I had to put it in a box and, to be honest with you, locked the box and probably only worked through it properly when my dad died about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I think I had an explosion of grief then, and I think that was actually grieving for both of them. So I know I didn't go through the process properly. I just wondered whether it was too early, probably with your brother, but when your husband died, each one's different, I guess, but I wish I knew how to do it better. I just wonder whether there's probably people listening who've had a loss in the last few years, and how could you pass on any advice to help them?
I'm not sure that there is a right way or a process or a better way, but I do think that when we lose somebody that we love very much, or even when we lose somebody that we've maybe had quite a difficult relationship with, that can be even harder sometimes.
Well, yeah, because the guilt kicks in then, doesn't it?
It's just so much, isn't there? That it does kind of force us to kind of the edge of ourselves in a way. And I think that that's the whole thing, that we have to be able to be willing to stand on that edge, whatever that looks like. And that can be really almost impossible to do, especially if you've got like for you had a business to run, you had a young family that you were just, you were on this incredible journey of a 30-year-old. How do you do it better or do it right? You did it the way you did it, and you got on with your life. And then, yes, sure, it probably came and hit you. It's going to be different for everyone in every different situation. I just don't think there's a right way, but I do think that what it's about is about understanding that whatever it is that you do or need to do, that you honour that.
Yeah, that's really wise, I think. You can come through those experiences in a good way and in a bad way. I do think that. So I think a good way of dealing with trauma and pain, and there's a bad way of dealing with it. The bad way is becoming bitter and resentful about things, and the good way is it doesn't lessen the pain, but I think it deepens the person and makes the person more able to love and more able to show compassion perhaps to others, more vulnerable, I don't know, more authentic. it seems to me as if you've worked through all that in a really good way, because I know that you're I imagine, I didn't know you before, but I imagine you're a deeper, wiser, more authentic person than you were before.
Oh, without any doubt. Without any doubt. I think it is, it is true that no matter what we are faced with in life, that probably it's the hardest, the most difficult times are the things that we learn the most from, without any doubt.
Moving on to more positive things.
Yeah.
Who was the first person that believed in you?
Well, I mean, the first person who I think really believed in me was my first dad, followed swiftly probably by my second dad, actually. My two dads were both great believers in me. My second dad, who is 91 now, still alive, is still probably one of my greatest champions. But the first person, I don't know why, I think it was my dad, but he... And again, it comes back to books and reading and stories, because we used to read stories together. We used to read books. And in fact, I learned to read. My mum always swears that she didn't really have to teach me, because I just kind of taught myself when I was 3 years old.
Wow, goodness.
And so I would grab the book out of either my mum's or my dad's hands and insist on reading it myself quite frequently. But my dad and I shared a great love of reading and stories together, and I think he really instilled in me that there was something quite special about my abilities even at that very early age.
I love the fact that some of your earliest memories are basically what you're doing now. I mean, this is quite unusual, Sue. You need to know this.
I know.
Most people go through I still don't really know what I want to do when I grow up, but you seem to have had that thread running through.
I tried very hard to ignore it.
To run away from it.
I did.
Yeah.
I really did. But I ended up there in the end.
So when did you end up there? How many years later was it?
I was in my early 30s before I realised. I went down all sorts of paths. I went down, when I came out of the sort of theatre route, I went into academia. And I was a lecturer at what was then, well, it became the University of North London, but it had been North London Poly for a short while. Became quite ill there because really I was in the wrong job. It took an awful lot. The universe was bashing me over the head a lot before I actually realised that the publishing had been staring me in the face all the time. And the one thing that I had loved in my job at the University of North London was I'd been responsible for putting together a magazine. I ran a European network of higher education institutions we were all involved in access to higher education for non-traditional students, and it was just this wonderful magazine. And when I came out of it, somebody said to me, "What was the best bit about the job?" And I said, "It was doing that magazine. It was editing that magazine. It was collecting the stories. It was putting it all together." And I just went, ping. and off I went. I went down the path of training to be an editor to start with.
Right.
Editor, proofreader, all of those kind of things.
And why do you think you were running away from it?
Do you know what? I really think that I was, up until that stage, I really didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't have a sort of a core. I think I believed that I knew that the whole thing about telling stories was incredibly important to me, that, you know, the whole thing about the theatre was about exploring stories and understanding people's stories. But I didn't really sort of, somehow I believed that there was a kind of, perhaps a more, if I'm honest, slightly more glamorous thing to be doing. It wasn't even, because as I said to you, I wasn't even fond of performing myself. So it wasn't like wanting necessarily to be a kind of big show off or anything. But I did love the whole vibe of the theatre particularly, and the whole sort of sense of community, I think that it was, that about putting plays together, rehearsing plays for weeks after weeks after weeks, and then and then the show and the drinks in the bar after the show, and
that's the real reason.
It was the social stuff that I loved, absolutely loved, and making stuff.
Well, yes, and you've come back to that, but maybe the publishing world didn't seem like that, possibly.
Exactly, and ridiculously, I don't know why. Well, it never really occurred to me that it would be an option for me, which is crazy when you think about it, because it's exactly what it is.
And I talked to a couple of your colleagues, and they both said basically what you do is build community.
Yeah.
And that's why they love working for you and working with you, is because you include them in. So, yeah, I think that's something that you do is build that community, which is desperately needed, isn't it, in today's very lonely world. I mean, there's an epidemic of loneliness we are going through at the moment. So for me, the workplace has to be a community.
Yeah.
The community is, for many people, broken down, particularly if they live in cities, although Bristol might be slightly better than some other cities, I know. But there's a desperate need to build community through our workplaces. I think you've definitely done that. There's a lot of talk about purpose, isn't there, these days, and people finding their purpose. It's a phrase you just used. What have you got any advice for people who think, well, I don't know what my purpose is? I don't know what my purpose is. I'm just here. How do I find out what my purpose is? What would you say to them?
Well, I think that it's about recognizing the voice inside you that kind of gets all excited, that, where something that really kind of just pings inside you, and that I'm coming back to your book actually a little bit, because there are so many great elements in particularly in The Fourth Bottom Line. I mean, I know in so many ways your first book is about purpose, but actually I think that there's a whole thing around understanding who you are by understanding things like when you get into your flow, when you get those moments of finding it easy, that moment of, I'm just doing this because I love it, and being brave enough to say, this is me, this is who I am, because that I don't think I found it even in my early 30s when I went into publishing. It took me a long time to get to 30 years on now to really, maybe it has taken me so long to find my purpose, because it's not that easy.
No, and for the first 10 years of running, I better say at this point actually, Sue's company published my books. That's why she knows them so well. We should have said that at the beginning. But for the first 10 years of running the business, I didn't really want to be there, and I really wanted to do charity stuff. That was what I thought my purpose was. So I was doing that for 10 years. Then I ran out of money, so I was kind of resentfully running a business just to feed my kids. Not immersed in it, half wanting to be there, half not wanting to be there. And same as you, it was only really when I realised that business actually was a way of doing what charities do and changing the world for better. Actually, it was that ping moment you mentioned of, oh, okay, so I can do this and do that at the same. Wow, okay, great, let's crack on. So it sounds familiar to you, doesn't it?
And I think one of the things that it's so sad, this whole thing about, the stuff that you learn as you get older and that you wish that you'd known sooner is actually how good we are sometimes when we're younger to at not hearing the inner voice that's saying to us, oh, I love this, because there's too much noise going on that says, oh yeah, but that's not good enough, or that's not right, or you really ought to be, or you should do, or there's so much in society that's set up to kind of help to make young people think that they need to do something because of something external. That inner stuff that we come to perhaps a bit later in life is where your purpose is. So the more you can tune into who you really are and what really, like that, I know that about you. I remember you telling me that before, about how actually when you were first in business and there was that kind of sense of it not being quite, and those early days when you were working for social enterprise and all of that kind of stuff, that was the proper work somehow.
Yeah.
But of course what you've done in business is so much greater and bigger than anything you could have done had you stuck in the sort of charity sector. So I think it's a tough one, but I think for the advice I would give is just really listen to yourself and give yourself absolutely the space and the time to explore absolutely who you are and what really floats your boat as early as you can, and go with it.
Yes, and stop looking what other people are doing
Absolutely.
and wishing you were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate "I wish" as a phrase. I'm sure you do too. Yeah, I still do it sometimes. I go, God, why can't I be like that? No, I'm meant to be what Paul Hargreaves is meant to be. Sue Richardson's meant to be doing, and just stay there. That's the place where we're most fulfilled. But we get, particularly with social media, probably. I don't really do it apart from LinkedIn, but it's so easy for people to get, wish they were doing someone else's life.
Yeah.
Whereas I believe, and I think probably you do too, that everyone does have a unique role to play. That's all the experiences of their life, positive and negative, has made that person who they are to do the thing they're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And no one else can do it, because we are all, amazingly, the 9 billion people in the world, we're all different.
Yeah.
And we all have a unique purpose.
Absolutely, without any doubt.
How would you say you've changed in the last, say, 10 years? How long has the publishing, is about 20 years, isn't it, the publishing company's been going?
Yeah.
I suspect you're probably doing it differently now to how you used to. So,
because another one of my, huge learnings in life was I lost one company. So I started my first publishing company in 1999, and in 2009 I lost that company.
What happened there?
So that was a horrendous time, because essentially what happened was, and again I think this comes back a lot to the fact that I didn't have 100% confidence in myself, that I was working 60-70 hours a week and I wasn't achieving anything very much. And I think it was really because I didn't really get my purpose. I didn't really understand what I was doing fully. And it was a struggle. It was really hard work. So I brought somebody into the business, and I've learned a massive amount from that, because very sadly, although she was one of my best friends, it ended in disaster. Not only the end of that relationship, but also my part in the business. So I moved away, and I spent a little time kind of exploring what I might do next. But I actually realised at that stage, I think, that there was only one thing I could do, which was the thing that I was on the path to do. And I carried on. But then I lost my husband. So there were kind of two quite major occurrences in my life, all happened within 2 or 3 years.
How did you manage to pick yourself up and go again? I mean, most people don't, I don't think. They just give up, go home. I
don't know where that came from, Paul. I think there was a real kind of sense of I needed to survive in some way. I did absolutely go back to therapy, back on that path. I probably will always, one way or another, end up back in that place, kind of looking for that support, looking inside. Because that's where there's nothing out there, really. The resources that we have are all inside ourselves. I know that. And you have to go in to get them sometimes. You have to go in to look for them. and recognise them, and it can be a very painful process. But that's what I did, and I picked myself up, and you know what, there's absolutely no doubt about it. It was a horrible time, and obviously, losing Pete was really tough. But actually losing the first business and losing that first relationship, yes, it was hard, but oh my goodness, I learned so much from that. I was a completely different kind of businesswoman at the end of that.
What did you do differently the second time round?
Oh, I mean, every single thing that I can think of about running a business, I think we were essentially doing wrong. Honestly.
I think I've been there as well.
Yeah.
Got the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you the way we were, the way we employed people, the way that we looked after people or didn't look after people, the way that we dealt with our clients. Honestly, I cannot think. It was so wrong. And
it was probably the norm, though, at the time.
It was completely the norm. And I was looking all the time I think I was deeply unhappy with being, I really felt I've gone off the wrong. This is why I ended up bringing someone in, because I believed that she would change it, and she just made it 100 times worse. I mean, it wasn't her fault. It was the way that she did things. Yeah. But I was attracted by her business success and her acumen, and of course, in fact, she was even more brutal, I suppose, and it was so tough. Now, when I was able to start again, and I literally had to kind of start from scratch, I just knew that everything was going to be different, that I was going to approach things in a completely different way. And so 2014, about 10 years ago, about a year after Pete died, I started to realise that I needed to move from where I was, and I moved to Bristol in 2015. I moved the business to Bristol, and I did still have I had some employees, but everything about the way that we were together, that we just did things very, very differently, and I've never looked back.
I mean, I had similar experience in a way. Also in 2014, didn't lose the business, but we came so close to, as you know, I think. So, yeah, it wasn't a loss, but it was an almost loss, and gave me I came to the end of myself. That's what happened. It was, my identity was in being a CEO. I hadn't actually tapped into who I was. It was more than what I did. When something traumatic happens like that in business, a lot of this crap gets stripped off us, doesn't it? And we have to start again, and it's just us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what it is. And being able to be, or recognizing that it's okay to be you, however you are and whoever you are, and however raw things are and however vulnerable you are, it just makes all the difference. And when your team see that you can just be absolutely the way that you are, then they can be the way that they are. They can be true to themselves too. And then you get the best.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the best. And there's a kind of level of trust that I would say is probably, for me, that's the biggest word in business, full stop. Whether that's clients, whether that's team, whether that's your relationship with yourself as a leader, it's all about trust. And it's the hardest thing to achieve. And yet it's the easiest if you are if you have integrity, if you have absolute honesty, and you're able to simply be who you are.
And would you say that you weren't that the first time round?
Absolutely. I really wasn't. I was trying to be Superwoman.
Acting a role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was trying to, and then when I brought the business partner in, I was trying to live up to her standards, which weren't mine. Everything that I was doing was not about me. It was such a struggle. It was a fight every single day.
Sounds all too familiar to me.
Yeah.
And some of that is because we're not connected enough with our emotions, and I think you come across to me as someone who's well connected to their emotions. Many leaders, I don't think, are, particularly men. I think women generally are better at this. How well would you say you're connected to your emotional side, and how much does that come out in the kind of day-to-day running of the business?
I think I am pretty. I think that's what all the work I've done on myself and the ability to kind of to recognise that those emotions are key to not only who I am but the relationships that I create. It's super important, I would say.
One thing I've realised is that really humans only can trust humans, and many leaders don't behave as humans. They behave as kind of almost machines in some cases. So I think vulnerability is important here, and when people know that their leaders are human, they're expressing emotions, they feel the pain too, they're not this other species, that's when trust flows for me. And that was very clear from talking to people that worked with you, that that connection was there with them. Is that something that you've worked on, or has that just happened? Or tell us a bit more about it.
It's not as if we've kind of sat in a room and done, a trust workshop. Or
a bit like the falling down thing, and you've got to catch them.
Exactly. But we did do a great deal of work at one stage on sort of key values for the whole team. Of which, and that was really, I think, where we discovered how huge trust was for all of us. And we explored those values together. We explored what they meant for one another, and we shared personal stories around those values, which I think was an amazing piece of work when I think about it.
Did you have someone in to do that?
We did, yeah.
Okay,
We had someone who kind of guided us through a process of that, which was fantastic. And then we sort of set those values, and then if somebody new comes on board, then we kind of know that, not that we've grown very much, but we've literally just taken on someone just very recently, and Paul and I did during the recruitment process, we were referring constantly to how that person kind of revealed those values in themselves, not by sort of asking them direct questions, but by just the way that they answered questions and the way that they were. And I mean, she's only been with us a couple of weeks, but she's already, we know, we love her. She's fantastic. I think there's a whole thing, isn't there? I mean, it is very true that everyone is different, and there's a place for everyone. It's true. I went to a talk this week by the COO of Neighbourly, Zoe Colosimo. I don't know if you know.
They're based in Bristol.
They're based in Bristol. Fantastic, brilliant business, absolutely amazing.
I know some people there.
Yeah, I thought you might know them. She was fantastic, because she was talking about how, when it comes to recruitment, you need to make sure that everybody that you bring into the business has a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And somebody put their hands up and said, yes, but what happens if you recruit and then you find out that they've actually got, and she said, don't worry about it. Give them the tasks that they will be really, happy to do, the repetitive tasks, just because somebody doesn't absolutely fit the bill doesn't necessarily mean. But if you think about, being a person who is able to be open enough and to be able to be vulnerable enough themselves to tell you when something's hurting them, when something's not going right for them, whatever that might be, that builds the trust that we need. And that builds the ability, if we do that as a team, if everybody does that together, then anyone new coming in finds that, whether they're I don't know, where they are on a disc chart, or where they are on, whatever, some other kind of metric, that it actually doesn't matter, that we can build trust, and they can build trust with us.
So in terms of getting the right people initially, how do you do that? Are there certain questions you ask them, or?
I think I've just been incredibly lucky. I really do. I think, yes. I mean, we obviously this our latest addition to the team. We Paul and I worked very, very hard on finding specific questions that we felt. But really, we it's nothing to do with the CV. That's for sure.
No.
Nothing to do with the CV.
No.
Much more to do with the person and who they are, and what
Yes.
makes them tick, and their attitude,
Yes.
and things like growth mindset or fixed mindset. Those things are important. And those are things that you discover by asking
Yes.
clever, open questions,
Yes.
really, rather than...
So I've built up this, feel free to share some of yours, but I've built up this list of what I call my heart and soul questions, which are designed to actually probably shock in some case, probably a bit like some of the questions I'm asking you, but no one can prepare for these questions. They're completely left field, but hopefully they expose some of the person behind the veneer. So one of them, for example, just to give you is, I'm going to give you £3 million. What are the first three things you're going to do with it? So a good answer for me with that is they want to probably pay off their mortgage. It's okay. Do something for their family and do something for charity. That, to me, is a good answer. Someone who says, go shopping, which I did have once. No. Goodbye. A very short interview. But it's trying to... And it's difficult, isn't it? And sometimes great people just aren't great people for you.
Absolutely.
So and I don't think we're going to have the answers today. But one of your colleagues, which kind of surprised me a bit, because we have had a conversation about this in the past, described you as being a spiritual person. So I'll be interested to know what your definition of spirituality is. I mean, you mentioned earlier on, the universe, and you've mentioned drawing on your resources from inside yourself. So when the word spiritual, I think it is being used in business these days. But I think people have very different meanings in their heads about what that word means. What does it mean for you?
I think they really do. And it's not a word I tend to use or particularly apply to myself. Not because I have any problems with the word, and I will probably apply it to other people quite happily. But I think possibly for me the definition of it is, and I think I think it's an interesting word because I think it changes. I don't think it's a fixed thing, because we might have 10 years ago, you might have thought a person of faith, or in the sense that they have a religion that's quite a fixed religion or whatever. But we know that's certainly not what spiritual means.
Quite often the least spiritual people.
Exactly. So what does it mean? Does it mean, that there is perhaps a knowledge that there's something bigger than you out there that has some kind of more... Do you know what I really think it is, actually? I've just thought about this. Just what came into my head is that everything has meaning. So in other words, nothing in life is shallow. Everything is everything has meaning. There is an awful lot of shallow stuff that goes on. But that is just flim-flam. It doesn't really mean anything. So life is meaningful. Like, we are here for a reason. I think that's probably what I believe. Yeah. I am here for a reason. It might take some of us 90 years to find out what that reason is. And that's okay. But that's the spiritual journey. Because while we're on that journey, while we're on that path, we're hopefully doing something good while we're here. And I think that's possibly what, for me, being spiritual is.
And is some of that perhaps noticing things now that you wouldn't have noticed when you were younger?
Oh, for sure. I mean, again, if it is a spiritual path of some kind, then without any doubt, the further you go down it, the more will be revealed. One would hope. But then you're going to fall down the odd hole, aren't you? As well, on the path, there's going to be holes that open up in front of you and you have to dig your way out of them. And that's all part of it too. But I think there's a difference between, I would say almost all of my friends, almost everybody that I know is actually, that would be a spiritual person under that definition. And the difference is, when someone is literally living day to day or being driven by, as I say, perhaps the slightly more shallow things. You talked about the interviewee who said they'd go shopping with your £3 million. They're not quite yet on their spiritual path, I would suggest. Do you see what I mean?
Comment,
it's that sort of, there's an awful lot of stuff that we can do in life that's very meaningless.
Yes.
But actually, if we're looking for meaning in life, then that makes us spiritual.
So it's a case of perspective then, really, isn't it?
I think
seeing things from a certain perspective.
Yeah, and I think generally with a kind of a movement towards making the world a better place in some way, even if it's a very small way, that by being a happy person, by smiling at people that you meet in the street, by being, there are ways that people are creating meaning in life in the tiniest ways, and that's okay. That's brilliant.
So are there any kind of spiritual practices you do? I mean, maybe your crafting is a bit like a spiritual practice in a way, is it?
I think it absolutely is. Yeah, I call it my therapy. I call it my sanity.
What happens to you when you're doing
I think
that?
it's sometimes it's about flow. It's about just being in the moment. It depends on what I'm working on.
These tiny models intrigue me. I mean, how tiny are they?
Well, I am actually, the thing that I've done for 25 years is beadwork, and it came out of embroidery, which is where I began. And I started embroidering with little tiny beads, and the beads eventually just took over. And so I started off making jewellery out of beadwork, So beadwork itself, bead weaving, is a craft where you have needle and thread and little tiny seed beads that you stitch together in different formations. And I just ended up with just drawers full of jewellery that I just can't wear. So I moved on to making little boxes, little bowls, little sort of storage canisters, little ornamental things out of beads.
And just talk to me, what is happening inside you when you do it? Because a lot of people are helped, but it's not something I do. But I know a lot of people who are more and more actually finding a kind of mindfulness in doing it. What is it's happening inside you when you're doing stuff like that? Is it just the fact that you can't really think about anything else when you're doing it, or is there something more profound going on?
I think it is to do with getting out of your head. We spend all of our lives in our heads, don't we? I know I do.
Yeah.
I'm a very heady person. My last therapist took about a year to stop me, intellectualizing everything. And it is really true. We live in our heads, so many of us. And the thing about anything like that, I knit as well and I crochet as well, is this sort of meditative, rhythmical process. You're being creative, you're making something, you're moving from something that is nothing into something that is something, but actually without really having to think too much. There are times when you're thinking, but you're thinking in a very different way. So you might be thinking in a sort of constructing way.
Yeah.
So, but then you stop. You don't have to do that for long, because then there's just the making. So I think that's what appeals to me. It just switches me off completely up there for a while, almost every day for an hour or so.
So you do it every day, do you?
Almost
Wow.
when I'm at home in the evening. Yeah, I don't tend to do it, but yeah, almost every day. If I'm at home in the evening, I will do an hour's beading.
And do you feel different afterwards than you did before?
it's just, I suppose it's a habit.
Yeah.
It's just part of
but
what I do.
you miss it when you don't do it, I guess.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I always have something on the go, though. So if I have, if I literally, I'm staying overnight in London tonight, I shoved a crochet hook and a ball of yarn in my bag so that I've got something to kind of play with. You could call it an addiction.
A mindful addiction.
Mindful addiction, yeah. And a reasonably healthy one.
Yes, absolutely. Let's, we're coming towards the end of our time, but let's think a bit about the future. What unique gift do you think you haven't shared with the world yet that you may?
I have great plans to create something around the publishing business that enables more people to really develop their story, their thought leadership, and get their mission accomplished in the world for good. And I believe that gift is already in play, but I think it could be much bigger and there could be a lot more of it. And we are looking at our business model and we're exploring how we can deliver that on a much greater scale. So
that sounds exciting.
It is exciting.
I know quite a few of the authors who've used you to publish their books, and I would say you're doing that already, but it sounds like there's more to come.
Not enough. I want more.
How long do you think you'll carry on doing it for?
Until I get fed up. I can't. A lovely friend of mine wrote me an email the other day, and she said she's coming up to what she's calling preferment. I think that's wonderful. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
She might have made it up. She's clever. Instead of retirement, preferment.
Tell me
so
more.
I guess it's what she would prefer to do than to. But I'm certainly retirement is absolutely not something that I don't like that word.
No,
I can't imagine it. I don't want it. Whatever I do, I will always be creating something, I hope. But it's in terms of business, I'm not fed up yet, but I do need to do. I think it's that I've got to that stage. I'll be 65 in February, and there's a kind of stage where I've got to where it's kind of there's a bit of urgency around it, because it's like
yes, yes, you say that, but you could easily have another 30 years.
I could, but it could be less, and so there's a kind of I just have this kind of sense of wanting to get on with it a bit.
I love your energy, actually, and it does contrast with I'm not as old as you quite, but I went to a university reunion not that long ago, and about not all of them, but maybe half the people there. So I'm late 50s, and they all are too. About half of them seem to have given up on life.
So sad.
I mean, this is Oxford, so they're bright people, and I was the exception. But it's like they were kind of winding down, and I can't relate to that at all. So I'm pleased that you have the energy you have, and are a fantastic example to other 65-year-olds. And apparently, I read fairly recently that people are at their most creative between the ages of 55 and 75.
Is that right?
So you're only halfway through that window.
Got years then.
Yeah, absolutely. I asked, I'll ask you first, actually. I did ask your colleagues what they... This is a long time in the future, obviously. What will be on your tombstone? I know it's a weird question, but what would you want?
She did her best.
Well, I'll tell you what they said.
Okay.
And both very similar, actually. One said she changed the world.
Wow.
And the other said words that changed the world. That's particularly good for you, I think. If you could only leave one lesson behind for all those other people younger than 65 coming after you, what would it be? You've got one piece of advice to give.
Be you.
That sounds amazing. How many people do you think are being you or them?
I think it's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
I think the world asks us to be anything but. And we have to ignore it. We have to be us. Ourselves.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. We could be here all day if I ask you a follow-up question to that. So I won't, but it's something to reflect on, isn't it? For people listening. So I'd set you a little bit of homework to finish on. What a piece of advice you wish you had had at the beginning of your business life that you didn't?
Of course, now I'm afraid this is going to sound really repetitive, because what you made me think of was that, especially as a woman, that I wish I had been told that I had everything I needed, and to have confidence in myself that I could create whatever I wanted to. Because I think it took me way too long to get to that place. I'm still working on that. But, I wish somebody had been just sat me down and said, you've got it, you can do this. And I think an awful lot of young women, even now, although, I keep thinking about some of the young women that we met when we were doing this latest recruitment. And they were so much wiser and more self-aware and more confident than I ever was as a young person. So maybe actually this younger generation have got more than we had. But that would be the advice I wished I'd been given.
And a piece of advice you did have, but you've actually realised it was a waste of time and you've ignored it.
Yeah, so in the parting of the ways, when I lost that first business, I was told quite firmly that there was no point in me pursuing another publishing company, and that I really ought to go and get a job.
Get a proper job.
Get a proper job. Which I thought about for about 4 hours.
That long?
One evening, and woke up the next morning and went, don't be silly.
Does that person know that you didn't take their advice?
Yes.
That was my dad's advice for many years.
Was it?
Get a proper job.
Yeah.
And then he finally realised that it wasn't going to happen. Yeah.
Luckily, my parents have been amazing all my life and have never said anything like that to me. But it was somebody else. But yeah.
And I asked you to re-look at the fourth bottom line, which you very proud that you published, and to choose one of the 50 leadership characteristics in there that you feel that you most need to work on currently.
And you said that was almost impossible. As you know, I love this book. It's just one of my favourite books. I love it so much, and I find it really hard because probably if you ask me tomorrow, it might be a different one. But for today, I'm going to pick playful because I think that we could all do with a bit more. There was a wonderful thing I just caught on LinkedIn. There was a little clip of Gabor Mate talking about how when he was younger, he just worked and worked and worked and worked, and how he wished he'd had more fun. And he talks about Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin in the Enchanted Forest, and it just ends with, we all need to be in the Enchanted Forest a bit more. And it's just so lovely. And your chapter on playful touched me deeply when I reread it. I thought, I could do with a bit more of that, a bit more time in the Enchanted Forest.
Playful.
Yeah.
65-year-old. I love the sound of that. Sue, thank you so much for being my guest. Loved having you here. Your pioneering work, your authenticity has shone through. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thank you for listening.